Greetings, everyone, and welcome. I'm Jack, and this is my second build guide for Pathfinder 2nd edition. This video is not supposed to give optimization advice because I am a new player. Hopefully, what this will do is provide insight in some character concepts and build decisions, which will be entertaining enough and help us learn together this amazing system, which is Pathfinder 2nd edition. So today we are dealing with the Bard. We are going to tackle it as we did previously with the Barbarian. I'm going to start with a brief class overview, then I'm going to move on to a concept of the build and the build itself. I will do one thing differently. Last time I did a damage projection for the Barbarian. I didn't think it would make much sense to do it for the Bard, because the Bard is not in any way a damage dealer from what I've seen. But what they are is actually a full spellcaster. So instead I will present a sort of spellcasting snapshot. I will not do it level by level because I fear it would be too long of a video then. I will do it at every 5 levels. So starting from level 1, I will then show the spell selection at level 6, 11, 16 and 20. And hopefully this will give an idea on how the spells change and evolve and how the potentialities of the character change as they level up. A final note before starting, I would like to mention a decent enough guide to bards by Rokipo and RPG bot Bard Handbook, which were instrumental in guiding me through the Bard as a class, and they are a very valuable resource for new player who want to learn this class. And also Gortle's spell guide, which was very helpful together with Rokipo's guide in navigating the occult spell list selection for the first time, which is quite a daunting task for a new player. With that being said, without further ado, let's get into the build. The Bard. Now I have to confess I have a soft spot for bards. They were my first ever class in the 3.5 edition with which I completed a campaign, and right now in 5th edition D&D they are probably my favorite class, and they are certainly among the most powerful classes in the system. They are a very weird class. They are spellcaster that usually sing, they are entertaining, extremely charismatic, skilled, and in 5th edition they are perhaps a bit too powerful for their own good. How do Pathfinder bards compare? Well, the concept is really the same. They've got reasonable amounts of hit points, reasonable amount of defenses with armor proficiency, and a bit of weapon proficiency. They are better in this regard than most other, let's call them cloth casters. However, there is a bit of a trap, I think, here, because you might think, okay, then I should behave like a marshal. And then if you compare the bard to marshals, then your hit points become lower than the expected ones. Your proficiencies, both with weapons and defenses, don't scale quite as quickly. So you are in a poor situation. I don't know whether it's completely unviable to try for a melee martial bard build, but it seems as if you are struggling a bit with your core class. You are fighting against your proficiencies and you have to find ways to make them work, which is something martials don't have to do. But if you play in the role of a spellcaster, then you've got all these advantages, kind of like a cleric. The most iconic bard feat is their ability to inspire their party, and the way this is implemented in Pathfinder is through so-called composition cantrips. Inspire Courage is the cantrip they get from level 1. It's a spammable ability, unlike 5th edition Bardic Inspiration, so it's something you can do every single round, every single moment of your adventuring day. You never run out of this action, single action, which gives status bonuses to attack rolls, damage rolls, and saves against fear. So this is an ability which looks very appealing for a striker, so this is something that people who attack a lot will enjoy. Spellcasters, I wouldn't expect them to care as much about this ability. This is a 60-foot emanation, so it affects probably most of the party, if not the entirety of it, and seems like the core of what the bard wants to do. Interestingly, this ability does not rely on performance, or on charisma for the matter, so maybe if you really like this ability and you're playing a different character, this is something you can use and you can get through potentially an archetype without necessarily needing charisma. Bards have access to specializations, which are called muses. They are like the source of their inspiration in a way. And you've got Enigma Muse, the Maestro Muse, Polymath, and the Warrior Muse. And each of them has a different flavor and gives different feats and abilities to the bard. So, for example, a Polymath bard would be somebody who's about eclectic abilities, a very clever bard, when compared to the Enigma bard, which is more of a mysterious, sneaky bard, which perhaps leans more heavily on the occult side of his class, Lovecraftian horror and things like that. When looking at these muses, though, it seems as if Maestro is just better than the other ones. It offers a better spell, it offers a feat which is better than the others. And in general, the feats that they get throughout the character development seem incredibly appealing. So I am going to pick Maestro. I think it's a very safe option and a very reasonable baseline bard. As I was mentioning before, the big thing of the bard is that they are a full spellcaster, just like a wizard or a sorcerer, just like in 5th edition. And the spellcasting in Pathfinder works differently than in D&D because there is no class spell list. Instead, there is just a thematic spell list. You've got different themes like nature or arcane or divine. And the bard theme and the spell list they have access to is the occult list, which is a very interesting list. It got a lot of mental and emotional manipulation, as you would expect, a lot of illusions. It's kind of like a less blasty arcane spell list. I don't think this makes it an inferior spell list to the arcane. So these are the core elements of the bard class. Let's see what I am planning to do with those. While the bard is usually associated with a singing character, I have to confess that I usually like to pivot away from this stereotype with my bards. I like bards that inspire because they are either scholars or maybe diplomats that have so unconventional ways to deliver their bardic inspiration. And this is what I'm planning to do with this build. I want to be a dancer rather than a singer. In particular, I would like to be a ballerina. And to do this, I'm planning to take an ancestry which kind of clashes with this concept, similarly than what we did to the barbarian. So the barbarian had a small, unassuming ancestry, which you would not expect to be a murder machine. And I will do something similar for the bard. I want a clumsy, cumbersome ancestry, which, defying all physics and logics, manages to be extremely graceful and artful while dancing. And this is what captivates the audience and allows her to inspire her allies or befuddle and debuff her enemies. Speaking of captivating, last build I did a lot of shenanigans with archetypes. So now I want to kind of stick with one archetype using the free archetype rule. And this archetype that I've chosen is the Captivator dedication for a number of reasons. First of all, it seems incredibly thematic for the concept that I'm using. It enhances a lot our bardic abilities. And most importantly, what the Captivator archetype does, it is a spellcasting archetype. So it does give us extra spells. Now, there are many ways to gain spellcasting archetypes in Pathfinder 2nd edition. You can, for example, just pick a class like the Sorcerer or the Wizard or any class that is able to cast spells. And these classes provide you with spellcasting feats. However, these feats require, among the prerequisites, a mastery of a particular skill. For example, for a sorcerer, which uses the occult spell list, to gain the expert spellcasting feat, you would need to be a master in occultism, and for the master spellcasting feat, you would need to be a legendary in occultism. And this is not something that I think I can afford with the build I'm envisioning, because I have so many skills I want legendary proficiency in that I don't think I can fit occultism. The advantage of the Captivator spellcasting feat is that they do not have this feat tax. Because of this, and because of how well this archetype fits with the class, I'm going to be a Captivator ballerina. This is the build concept, so let's get into the actual build. Starting from level 1, our ancestry choice is the Kashrishi. Now, the Kashrishi is not large, there is no large ancestry, it is actually quite small, but it looks like a rhino. So we can have a dancing rhino, which is kind of what we wanted to do. It's going to be a ballerina, if you will. The background is usually a flexible choice, but for the bard there is actually a feat which is very, very powerful, and we probably want it from the get-go, and it is Virtuosic Performer. So we can go for Musical Prodigy and get this feat. And what this feat does is it gives us a +1 circumstance bonus when making a selected kind of performance, which goes up to +2 once we become a master in performance. Now, among these, we probably want to choose dance. Ballet would be the most fitting one. However, from an optimization point of view, a few words must be spent on this. Usually, performance would have the auditory trait. It can also have the visual trait. This means that your performance actions might not affect your allies if they cannot, respectively, hear you or see you. And actually, the circumstances where your allies will not be able to see you are probably more common than the ones where they cannot hear you. So maybe ballet and in general visual performances are not as good as auditory ones, and they are certainly not as good as performances who can have both tags like drama. I would not penalize as a DM a character for choosing a cool concept over a more optimized one, but keep in mind that maybe you want a type of dance which also has an acoustic component to it. For our ability scores, we want Charisma as our primary ability, so we are going to select it every time we can. We don't care much about strength, we would rather have dexterity, so we want our free boosts in Constitution for 14, 12 as a starting wisdom, 14 as starting dexterity, and 18 as a starting charisma score. For our ancestry feat, we will take community knowledge, which is a very powerful feat, which allows us to have a +2 status bonus on a triggering skill check once per hour. And this stacks, of course, with Virtuosic Performance, because this is a circumstance bonus, not a status. So we can have a pretty high bonus when we want to performance. Probably that's the most important skill for us. Our muse is going to be the Maestro. And for our heritage, we don't need really uncommon heritages, versatile heritages. Our feats are quite packed, as we will see, so we will go for an Essence heritage for an extra ancestry feat. And this feat can be Emotional Partitions, which gives us a nice buff to our saves against emotion effects. Finally, the skills. We can buff a bunch of physical skills. We can buff our social skills, which we probably want, us being a bard. Of course, we get an extra skill increase because Virtuosic Performance gives us performance, but we already have it from the bard class. And we are going to round out our social skill selection. As far as skill selection goes, I think this is a very obvious skill selection for a face character, but I'm not sure on whether this is the correct one or the optimal one. And I'm going to have a bit of a discussion about this in the next levels. Level 2, I want to take Bon Mot. This is an amazing action. This is kind of the diplomacy equivalent of Demoralize. We can use diplomacy in combat to do something. In this case, we are basically shit-talking our foe, trying to distract them. And if we succeed, we inflict a -2 penalty to perception and to will saves for 1 minute, which is very good for a character that has a lot of will-based effects. Of course, if we critically fail, we suffer that penalty instead, and the enemy has the option to retort to our quip, and if they do, they use one action and they end the effect. Also, this is an effect which has the linguistic and mental trait, which means this might not always work, but when it does, it seems an amazing asset to our character. So our ballerina, I'm sorry, I swear I'm going to stop, I just can't help myself. Our ballerina is a bit of a diva, maybe. She also not just dances, but taunts her enemies a bit. Or maybe we can find a way to weave in our bon mot in our dance somehow. Now, for the class feat, I think most powerful choice you can have is the multifarious muse feat. This allows you to complement the traits of your muse with that of a different muse. So you can, for example, if you really like it, get the bardic lore feat, which allows you to recall knowledge very efficiently, and also get true strike. Or you can get martial weapons proficiency, if you care about it, through the martial performance feat. But the probably most interesting option is the polymath, because of the versatile performance feat, which what it does is it allows you to use performance instead of both diplomacy and intimidation, respectively, to make an impression and demoralize. So what this feat would allow you to do is to actually ignore these two abilities and instead focus on two different abilities, and then bring performance up to legendary proficiency, thus giving you legendary proficiency when you try to make an impression and demoralize, and then get two other skills to legendary proficiency for a grand total of 5. This is, of course, very interesting, very powerful, but I'm not going to take it. And the reason is this feat does not apply to actions like Scared to Death and Bon mot, which require diplomacy, but do not ask to make an impression of you. It's just a separate action, and so versatile performance does not apply. Since I want to use both these actions in my build, I have decided to go a different way. But I'm sure you can have a very powerful and effective build by going this route instead, getting more skills and maybe more skill feats and different skill feats than the ones I'm going to choose. So multifarious muse does not offer to us as much because we want legendary proficiency, actual legendary proficiency, both in intimidation and diplomacy. So instead what we're going to take is we're going to take another composition cantrip, and we're going to take Inspire Competence. Now, what does Inspire Competence do? This allows us to take the aid action using performance instead of the normal skill check. Now, this requires a bit of an explanation. The aid action is very complex. It's also a bit vague in its description. Basically, you take an action, and then as a reaction, you can provide a bonus to a character who's attempting an action if you succeed on your aid check. So, for example, there is a character who's trying to strike an enemy down. You could try to throw an arrow at that enemy to distract them. In that case, you would make a strike with your weapon, and if your strike can beat the armor class, probably, of the enemy, that would be the difficulty check of the aid, then you would provide a circumstance bonus to that ally's attack. Or also, if your ally is trying to burst down a door, you could take the aid action, and if you succeed at an athletics check, then you would give a circumstance bonus to the ally carrying out the action. Now, as you can see, there are a number of issues with this action. Apart from the difficulty check of the aid action, you also need to be in the circumstances where you can describe a use of a skill that is going to help your ally in what they're trying to do. And this might not always be possible. You might be far away from your ally. You might not be proficient in the skill you are trying to use to aid your ally. So you might need to do a strength-based skill, but you are maybe a weak caster, so your chances of succeeding and being helpful are not very high. What Inspire Competence does is simplify a lot the aid action by saying, no, you are such a good performer that performance is the skill you're going to use, and performance is a skill we're going to be very good at. So our aid action is improved by the use of this composition cantrip. Of course, there is the obvious exception that if your performance ability isn't actually helpful, so there is the obvious case of being stealthy, You cannot sing and make somebody stealthier. That's not how it works. So it's still not a guaranteed use of the performance to aid, but it's, I think, a bit better than the baseline aid action. I also do not think that this is in competition with Inspire Courage. Now, composition cantrips do not stack because you cannot have more than one composition cantrip active at a time. This is a limitation of the bard, and it's a limitation that we can kind of work around as we progress in character level, but we must always keep it in mind. So I don't think in combat, especially at this low level, there is ever a scenario where it's better for us to inspire competence than inspire courage. Of course, there might be a particularly important skill check, like an athletics check, which is very important for the success of the combat. Then we might want to inspire competence, but it's probably circumstantial. Most of the times, inspire courage is just better. However, I think we cannot deny that inspire competence offers a lot more out of combat utility. And actually, with our build, what we're going to try to do is to take some ancestry feats to capitalize on this ability a bit more. For now, it's just a nice added utility for our build. We also get at level 2 our first free archetype, and I'm going to take nothing actually. This is a bit weird. I don't know if you can do it. The issue is I want to take the Captivator archetype, and the Captivator dedication is a level 4 dedication. Now, there is discussion online that says that this should be a level 2 dedication. This seems to be a bit in need of an errata. We will see as we progress in level that there are some weird things about the Captivator dedication. If your Dungeon Master allows you to take this at level 2, great, you get an extra archetype feat. Use it maybe for a Familiar Master to get a Familiar. This build could really benefit from a Familiar. I wasn't able to fit it in, but it's certainly something you can try, especially if you're a gnome as an ancestry. But we are going to do the things as they are, rules as written right now, so we are not going to take the Captivator dedication. This means, of course, that we cannot take any dedication right now, because otherwise at level 4 we will not have the requirements of at least 2 feats to unlock the Captivator dedication. Again, I'm not sure if you can choose not to take an archetype feat. This is something you will have to discuss with your DM, but surely they will either allow you to take it at level 2, which I don't think is unbalanced in any way, shape or form, or they will allow you to take nothing and unlock it at level 4. It doesn't seem too unreasonable to ask. At level 3, we get our first skill increase. We are a Maestro Bard. Performance chooses itself, basically. We also get a general feat. And what we want to take for our general feat is Incredible Initiative. We want to act as soon as possible. We want to drop our buffs and debuffs, the sooner the better. We also get an increase in reflex saving throw, which is good. And we also get signature spells, which is something we are going to cover in our spell Snapshot. But this is basically a very cool feature that all spontaneous spellcasters get. At level 4, we can choose another class feat. And I'm going to pick Inspired Defense. Inspired Defense is a composition cantrip, so again, this competes with Inspire Courage and Inspire Competence. I would say that there is actually a bit of competition between Courage and Defense. They are both good options in combat, but there is not too much competition because they apply to different circumstances. While Courage is offensive, Defense, as you would expect, is defensive, and in particular, it provides you armor class and saving throws bonus, as well as damage resistance. So if you are surrounded by a lot of enemies, and they are going to deliver more attacks to your party than your party is going to dish out, then probably Inspired Defense is the better option. If instead you are against a single powerful target, then maybe Inspire Courage is better. Level 4, we do get finally our Captivator dedication. This gives us a couple of bonus cantrips. We are going to see this in the spell snapshot. And it also allows us to get expert proficiency in a skill. We're going to choose diplomacy, so our bon mot becomes better. And we also get at level 4 a skill feat. At this point, I think since we want to use Demoralize, as I said, to be able to use it effectively, we need Intimidating Glare. This gets rid of the auditory and language tag of the demoralize action. And so this allows us to demoralize more efficiently. At level 5, we get another skill increase. At this point, the only skill we need to keep up is intimidation, so we're going to put it to expert. We also get our ability boosts. They're pretty straightforward. We want to increase constitution, we want to increase wisdom. Higher dexterity is always nice, and we want to increase charisma. Our ancestry feat at level 5, we are going to get a very powerful Casuistry feat, which is called Well of Potential. This is an action which allows us to refill a focus point once per day. So more uses of lingering composition, basically, which is very powerful. At level 6, we get another class feat, and we are going to get another composition cantrip. And I'm getting all the composition cantrips because I find them lovely and I like to have lots of options. But as you can see right now, we are probably struggling a bit with choosing which one to keep active. Now, Dirge of Doom is an AoE Frighten. It's like Demoralize on steroids. It does not allow a saving throw. It also prevents enemy from reducing their Frighten value below 1. What an amazing AoE debuff. It's very good. For our free archetype feat at level 6, I think we can take basic Captivator spellcasting. Again, this is a bit weird because this is the first example of the Captivator being weirdly spaced. This is a level 4 feat, but at level 4 you can take the dedication, so shouldn't this be level 6? Unless, of course, they are expecting you to take this with your class feat. It's a bit weird. This gives us a couple of occult spell slots. Very good. These can only be the enchantment or illusion school. Fortunately, these are kind of like the spells we are expected to do, so this is not a very harsh restriction. We also get a skill feat. At this point, I think I will go for Assurance. We do not want to fail our performance skill checks, and at some points, maybe we're not fishing for the critical, maybe just a successful performance is nice for a lingering composition, and then Assurance prevents us, guarantees successes, so this is a good point to take it. At level 7, we get a skill increase. I was tempted to go again performance, but I think master feats, the skill feats that have master prerequisite for intimidation are just too good because they give you free actions, so I'm going to prioritize intimidation. But I think there is a strong argument in just getting performance. This would also improve our bonuses from Virtuosic Performer. So if you cannot wait to get the +2 from Virtuosic Performer, then this is where you can get it. This is the sooner you can get it. But I just picked Intimidation because the Intimidation feats at Expert Proficiency are just amazing. We get a general feat at level 7, and I took Adopted Ancestry here because there are things that I'm planning to do with this character. As I said, I want to take Ancestry feats to make my aid action better, and the class that I'm going to choose for this is the Halfling. So right now this feat does nothing for us, but hopefully it will pay off later on. This is a feat you can retrain in. If you want, you can take something like Toughness right now and then retrain Adopted Ancestry when it becomes relevant at level 9. You can min-max this. I don't know how necessary this will be. We also get Expert Spellcasting Proficiency for our occult spells, which is great. At level 8 we get another class feat, and I'm going to choose an amazing feat which is Inspire Heroics. This is a Metamagic focus spell, which is a free action. Already I love it. And it's a free action you can cast before either Inspire Courage or Defense. And if you do that, you have to do a performance check, which has a very hard difficulty class. And if this check succeeds, then your bonuses increase from a +1 to a +2. Unless you critically succeed, then your bonus will become a +3. This is amazing. You cannot use this together with Lingering Composition because these Metamagic spells specifically say that your next action has to be to cast these spells. So if your next action is instead to cast Lingering Composition is a free action, but it's an action nonetheless. So you can either choose one or the other. So lingering composition is better for action economy. Heroics is better for when you're facing a very powerful enemy and maybe you frighten them, you demoralize them, and then you drop an inspire competence for a great offensive buff to your marshals. Very potent effect, and an effect which we are going to capitalize onto later on. It's like the emergency focus point for burst situations, kind of. We also get an archetype feat, and we choose Captivating Intensity. This is a level 6 Captivator feat. Again, it's weird because if you were to get it at level 6, it would literally do nothing. Instead, at level 8, it's giving us an additional cost of our first level Captivator spell slot. As we level up, this will keep giving us more and more, because this feat always gives you extra spell casts of all your spell slots other than your 2 highest spells. So this is a very good feat to get. We also get at level 8 a skill feat, and the reason why I chose expert proficiency, master proficiency in intimidation rather than performance is so that right now I can take battle cry, free demoralize when I roll initiative. Amazing. Level 9, we get our skill increase, and yes, we have neglected performance, we probably shouldn't have. Now we bring it up to master proficiency. We also get our ancestry feat. This is why we took the adopted ancestry, because now we can take helpful halfling, which allows us to grant a +3 circumstance bonus when we aid, when we critically succeed at our aid action, and a +4 circumstance proficiency bonus if we have master proficiency. And what about that? We just got master proficiency in performance. I don't think that this feat was balanced around the inspire competence action. With this, we can just hand out +4 or +3 bonuses to pretty much every action our allies do other than strikes, because inspire competence does not work with attack actions. However, if we have another demoralized character, if we have a character that is using stealth, if we have a character that is recalling knowledge a lot, these characters are going to gain so much benefit from this feat that it's honestly incredible. We become, I think, the ultimate support character with this feat. Our inspire competence becomes so good that we might actually start considering to use this in combat sometimes. We also improve our fortitude saving throws and our will saving throws, and we automatically succeed, we critically succeed at will saves when we roll a success, which is pretty nice. Level 10, more ability boost, more of the same, constitution, wisdom, dexterity, and charisma. We get a level 10 class feat, and I chose annotate composition. This is a very lengthy feat to read, but basically what it allows you to do, it allows you to spend 10 minutes to write a composition spell on a scroll. This is interesting because we are a ballerina, so we don't actually sing. So this spell is not really a song, but it's more like a diagram of some dance moves that you could do. And then somebody else can read the scroll and they can trigger the composition cantrip instead of you. This is very powerful, not just for action economy point of view. Maybe you have, a ranged character or another spellcaster that doesn't quite know what to do with the third action, or even a marshal that doesn't necessarily want to move towards the enemy but wants the enemy to come towards them. So somebody that has a third action that they can use in the first turn of combat. And what annotate composition does is give them something useful to do on that first turn, but furthermore, this is a solution to the problem of composition cantrips not stacking, because it's that creature, that character that's going to cast the composition, not you, thus allowing you to have multiple compositions finally up and running. Now, of course, you can do this only once. You probably want to use it with lingering composition, but if you do use it with lingering composition, this is going to become very focus point intensive because this ability costs you 1 focus point to just use outright. So right now, when we refocus, we get only 1 focus point. This means we can use a lingering annotated composition only once per day, twice if we use our Cash Rishi ancestry feat to regain a focus point, Well of Potential. At level 12, this is going to change, but for now, we are probably just going to use this every time we end a combat and everyone refocuses. We can also annotate a composition and have like an Inspire Courage or an Inspire Defense on the first round of combat, together with a Dirge of Doom or a Courage, depending on the situation. At this point, I would also like to cover a feat, which I skipped, which apparently could have solved this problem partially, allowing us to have multiple composition spells going at the same time, and this is a 6th level class feat, which is called Harmonize, which is an action, and it allows us to perform multiple compositions simultaneously. We harmonize, and then if our next action is to cast a composition, that composition can stack with another composition. This looks kind of like an auto includes feats. However, it doesn't quite work as well as you would think, because you cannot stack this with lingering compositions or Inspire Heroics. Again, these are meta magic focus spells, which require you to then cast the composition they apply to. And the same is true for Harmonize. You must use Harmonize and then cast the composition. So you can never do Harmonize, lingering, and then do, for example, an Inspire Courage, because the moment you do lingering, you would be using an action which is not casting a composition cantrip, thus losing the Harmonize. What you can do is you can cast Harmonize, cast your Inspire Courage, for example, and then do lingering composition and cast another Inspire Defense, for example. But next turn, your Inspire Courage, Harmonize, would end because it only lasts 1 round, and then you would have to use 2 actions every turn to cast Harmonized Inspire Courages. So it is feasible to do this, it is possible, but it's very action intensive. In particular, if you use 2 actions every round, you don't get to cast a spell, because most spells are 2 actions. And so at the end of the day, I decided not to take it, because I think that by 6th level we have enough good spells that we want to cast that using our entire turns for cantrips is a bit questionable. But if you really, really want to have multiple compositions at the same time, this is how you do it. Back to level 10, our free archetype feat at level 10, we get, strangely, Expert Captivator spellcasting. This is, I think other spellcasting feats are usually level 12. This is a bit early to get them, but I'm not going to complain for that. We also, as I mentioned, do not need any skill proficiency in occultism to unlock this, so this is great. More spell slots. We also get a skill feat, and we're going to stick with the intimidation feat chain and get Terrified Retreat, which allows us to make enemies flee when we critically succeed at demoralization, if the target has lower level than us. So pretty nice control. Level 11, we get a skill increase, we bring diplomacy up to the other skills, we also get a general feat. And at this point, I think I'm going to take Ancestral Paragon, which allows us to take an extra level 1 ancestry feat. Halfling Luck, it's an obvious choice. This allows us to reroll a failed skill check or saving throw. We are doing pretty often skill checks. We might critically fail them when we don't want it. Saving throws are also something we can critically fail. This helps a lot. At level 11, we also get increased weapon expertise, which is not something I see myself using very much. Maybe at the beginning of the build, we could have started with a bow. Actually, we should probably have started with a bow so we can have a strike action, short bow that is. I didn't bother even showing it because I didn't think this is much of a striker class. Basic starting equipment shouldn't matter much, just a light armor and the weapon is fine. So at this level, we have got spells, we've got a bunch of cantrips. Our turns are very full, so I don't think we're going to use this feature a lot. We also get increased proficiency in perception, which is nice. At level 12, we get another class feat, and we are going to take Inspirational Focus. This is huge for us. This allows us to refocus and gain 2 focus points instead of 1. This allows us to spam annotate composition with lingering composition, and then regain both our focus points. So we can do it at the end of every combat. So at the start of every combat, one of our allies can cast one of our lingering compositions. We gain excellent action economy out of this. It is a very powerful and impactful ability. We also have a level 12 archetype class feat, and I'm going to take Reactive Charm. So once per day, when we are the target of a spell or an attack, we can cast a first level enchantment spell for a reaction instead of 2 actions, and this reaction spell has to target the foe which is attacking us. This could be overpowered if it wasn't restricted to enchantment spells. I think Command is a good option for this reaction, so we can make the enemy drop prone, for example, or drop the weapon. Fear is also a good candidate for this reaction. Extra spells per turn is pretty good. We also get a level 12 skill feat. We are getting a bunch of reactions, so why not get another one? I'm going to take Skeptic's Defense. Again, it's uncommon. If your DM doesn't allow you to take uncommon feats, pick anything else. This is a nice defensive reaction which allows us to counteract mental spells or effects on us using our intimidation. It seems pretty neat defensive option. Level 13, we get our skill increase. We would be getting our 3rd master skill increase, but we actually already have an extra skill increase on diplomacy, courtesy of the Captivator dedication. So what we could do is get one of our skills up to expert, or we could get an extra skill training, which is what I'm going to do. And why not take stealth? We can sneak around a bit if we want to, but really you can do whatever you want with the skill increase at this level. We get an ancestry feat at level 13. So did you like Halfling Luck? If you liked it, then you're going to love Incredible Luck, which allows us to use Halfling Luck once per hour rather than just once per day. This is incredible, as the name of the feat suggests. We get higher proficiency in light armor, good. We get weapon specialization. They really want to tempt you with using weapons as a bard. It looks like a trap. I am sure warrior muses bards can do something gishy if they want to. To me, this looks like a trap, and I'm going to avoid it. But do let me know in the comments, is Pathfinder really... Can you play a martial bard in Pathfinder 2nd edition and feel good about it? Or are you just going to be put to shame by the actual martials? Let me know what you think. Let me know if there are any actual Gish bard players out there who cannot wait to get their weapon specialization unlocked. Level 14, we get a class feat. I'm going to pick Quicken Casting. Now, Quicken Casting is a bit disappointing because it allows you to use a spell which has to be 2 levels lower than your highest level spell. That's pretty fair. And you can reduce the numbers of actions to cast this Quicken spell by 1. This is minimum 1 action, and this is huge because it allows you to cast 2 spells a turn. The reason why I say it's disappointing is that you can only use this once per day, which is very sad. However, the counter argument is, how many times are you going to fight a boss type enemy in one day? Hopefully only once. So this is like the emergency meta magic when you need to really squeeze through your super powerful debuffs. It's a flex slot. I see people discussing about this and saying it's trash. I don't think it's trash. I don't think it's super powerful either. If you don't like the fact that it's something you can use only once per day, you can certainly take something else. In particular, Earworm is incredibly powerful. This allows you to implant basically a performance inside one of your allies. and then you can activate it as a free action. So this is like an action economy cheat. I don't take it just because of flavor. Flavor-wise, this feels like brainwashing your party members, and I just don't like it. This is something that in real life would be horrible. Just putting an earworm inside your character mind with this song that just never ends. It's terrible. Don't do it. It's a bad thing to do. It should have the evil tag, but it doesn't. So maybe I'm just overreacting, but it feels like a very nasty thing to do to our party member. It is very potent. It is very powerful for sure, and it's a buff that they're going to appreciate, because the person receiving this isn't actually subject to its effect. It's their character. So I'm probably being too harsh towards this this feat, but I don't like it, so I'm not going to take it. I think Quickened is good enough. Free archetype, and I will get Effortless Captivation. This is amazing. It's a free action again, and this allows us to sustain a spell from the enchantment and illusion schools without paying the single action price, which is usually associated with it. When we get to our spell snapshot, we will see how good this is. Actually, I cannot wait. I'll tell you right now, we can sustain for free illusory creatures, which is a great spell, which I cannot wait to talk about. But yeah, this is good. And we also get a level 14 skill feat. I think I will take Shameless Request. This allows us to request something more effectively with less drawbacks, and we can also use it to keep asking for something without suffering repercussions, although the feat does state that these creatures eventually tire of us, though they still have a positive attitude towards us. This seems a bit vague. There isn't a hard restriction saying that after a certain number of attempts, this stops working. So it's a bit dependent on the DM interpretation, but you can keep asking things, can I have that? Can I have that? Can I have that? Until eventually, the NPC is going to say, fine, whatever, do what you want. So this is a nice feat for a face character. So our ballerina Kashrishi, now she's becoming a bit demanding. At this point in her career, she's probably quite accomplished, and if she doesn't get, she knows how to get her way. Level 15, we get a skill increase, and this is our first legendary skill increase. And at this point, I cannot really... the Intimidation feat, Scared to Death, is amazing, but at this point we have so many good things we can do with performance that I just cannot once again delay this for a moment. We want our legendary performance proficiency. We get our ability boosts, again, Constitution, Wisdom, Dexterity, and Charisma. And we get a general feat. Toughness, safe option, not dying seems pretty good. We also get Master Proficiency with all our spells. Good of the Occult, which is the only list we're going to cast, so pretty good. Level 16, we get, oh look, Effortless Concentration, which is like our Captivator feat, only we can use these both. They have different names, different effects. Effortless Captivation only applies to enchantment and illusion spells. Effortless Concentration applies to all the other types of spells, so we can now sustain 2 spells every turn without expending an action. So if we are sustaining spells, we effectively get 5 actions per turn. Pretty nuts. We also get another archetype feat, and it's pretty obvious what we're going to take. We're going to take the Master Spellcasting, the highest tier of spellcasting available. We also get a skill feat. Sadly, performance doesn't really have an amazing legendary feat, but it does have one. So we're going to take it, Legendary Performer. This basically makes us a celebrity, as you would expect. Has effects on earning income. I don't know how relevant and how often you would do this, but I guess you might as well. Level 17, skill increases, Intimidation, please. If only I could get it at the same sooner, but Intimidation it is. We get a level 17 Ancestry feat, and since we are a very supportive character, I think this is a good moment to get Shared Luck. Shared Luck allows us to use our Halfling Luck not just on ourselves, but on allies as well, on their skill checks and saving throws. So we can use our luck more reliably. There are more triggers for our luck, and we are probably going to use it all the time to help our allies who are going to love us if they didn't already. Greater Resolve gives us increased proficiency to will saving throws, which is very cool. Level 18. Now this is where we get our, endgame feats. The first one is Eternal Composition. This is a permanent quickened effect, which gives us an extra action every turn, and we can use it only to cast a composition cantrip. So there we go. If we wanted to take Harmonize, this would be a great moment to do it, because at this point we could retrain it for something, and then, since we have this free action for a cantrip, then we can do that routine of casting a harmonized spell and then recasting it. So harmonized composition every turn, because that composition would be just a free action. So instead of us costing 2 action, it would cost just 1 action. And so it's something a bit more easy to fit in your turn. We have survived up to level 18 without being able to do that. I think we can survive to the rest of our game without it. But again, this is something to keep in mind. This is a possibility that is open for us right now. We also get a free archetype, and I'm going to take Heightened Captivation. What this feat does, it's a bit weird and it's not maybe very clear to read, but what this does is that you choose one of your Captivator spells and you basically can cast it once as your highest Captivator spell. So what this does is it grants you an additional spell slot of your highest level, which you can use to cast this particular spell you selected. This is incredibly powerful. This is a feat that you could take more copies of and you would be happy. So you can cast a higher level Heroism, you can cast a higher level whatever, and this is a feat you can take multiple times. So if you took this every level, starting from level 8, you would just get an insane amount of high level spell slots. That is perhaps a bit cheesy, so I didn't do it, but at this point we are such high-level characters that I feel we deserve a bit of cheese. So if my understanding of this feat is correct, and this is indeed how it works, this is a great moment to take it, because we have high-level Captivator spell slots right now, so having more of those is very welcome. We also get a skill feat. We are a bit late to the party, but why not upgrade our Demoralize action with Scare to Death? We are probably very good with it. Level 19. Skill increase. We get our last skill increase in Diplomacy. That's legendary. This is good news for Bon Mot. We also have a General Feat. Again, this is a good spot for Canny Acumen to increase our our Fortitude saving throws, D&D player here. And our Fortitude saving throw, again, this is a feat that becomes active at level 17, so you could retrain Toughness for this, and then get Toughness at this point. I don't know, just see how important it is to min-max this. I don't think it's the end of the world if you wait a couple of levels to get this, unless you keep being targeted by horrible things like, I don't know, disintegration and stuff. We have legendary proficiency in our spells. Great stuff. We get Magnum Opus, which gives us 10th level spells. This is very exciting, and we're going to see some very cool stuff in here. And finally, we get to our level 20. We get Constitution, we get Dexterity, we get Charisma. Wisdom, it's pointless to increase it. We can get a bit of extra strength if we want it, or we can get an extra skill for intelligence. And that extra skill can be really whatever you want. At this point, I don't think it really matters. Let's take Nature. And then we get our Capstone ability. Now at this point, if we had taken Harmonize, we could get Symphony of the Muses, which just lifts all restrictions on compositions and say we can cast all the compositions we want, we can make them continue for all the duration, for the duration we want. However, as I was saying, at level 18, we survived thus far without this feature, and I think we don't really need it. But what we weren't able to do until very recently is cast 10th level spells. And Perfect Encore gives us an additional 10th level spell slot, which is like doubling the amount of 10th level spells we have. It's like casting Wish an extra time per day. Wouldn't you like to do that? I sure as hell would. So I'm going to take that. We also get our free archetype capstone. It's not really a capstone. It's something we already took 2 levels ago, but it's very good. Heightened Captivation. We can take it again, and we will. And finally, our level 20 skill feat. Again, there is no, since we can, might as well take the legendary feat, Legendary Negotiator. A nice 3-action activity, which makes us able to quickly negotiate with a -5 penalty, but we can basically end combat encounters by just talking to people, potentially. So this wraps up the first part of the build. Of course, there is a big missing piece, which is the spells. Without it, this looks like a support character, but I don't think it's clear quite how supportive and how impactful on the battlefield the Bard as a class can be, and our Ballerina in particular is. So let's get straight to our spellcasting snapshots and see how the magical growth of our character is going to look like. Alright, let's start from the beginning. At level 1, first we have to select our cantrips. Let us get an offensive cantrip right away. I think the best option is Telekinetic Projectile. It's either that or Phase Bolt. Phase Bolt deals marginally less damage. It deals d4 plus our ability score, whereas the Telekinetic Projectile deals d6. The issue with Telekinetic Projectile is that it kind of needs a loose, unattended object as a target. There is some garbage usually around. If there isn't, you can bring your own. I don't know how literal your DM will be. Maybe they will allow you to just spam this and not force you to bring a bunch of garbage into every room of the dungeon, but you might want to be prepared. If it's so hard, just get the Phase Bolt. The sad thing about this cantrip, despite this being probably our best option, is that it is an attack cantrip, so you cannot cast this together with a strike. At low levels, this might be a reasonable thing to do to deal a bit more damage. There are plenty of options to get access to things like Electric Arc, which do not require an attack roll, thus can be combined with strike. There are ancestry feats. There are also familiars. If you can fit any of these in the build, you will be able at low level to deal marginally more damage. I do not think that is essential for a bard. It's a nice boost for the low levels, but I think Telekinetic Projectile is serviceable enough, if not too exciting. Then, of course, we do not have dark vision, we do not have low light vision, so I think light might come in handy. Quite useful spell, a standard of D&D-like games. And then, this is not a standard, this is exclusive for Pathfinder, and I think it's the best cantrip in the game, and I'm going to demand my DM to include this, to homebrew this in our campaign. It's called Musical Accompaniment, and what it does is it gives you a soundtrack. This soundtrack gives you a status bonus to performance and potentially to deception, diplomacy, and intimidation if, you know, you're giving, for example, a rousing speech and then you've got a heroic soundtrack behind you. As it heightens, the duration becomes longer. Right now it lasts only for 1 minute, but already at level 3, as spell level 3, this will last for 1 hour. And this cantrip is amazing because it basically allows you to have your own personal soundtrack following you around. We already have a status bonus to performance because of our racial ancestry, goddammit, feat community knowledge, but this we can use once per hour. whereas this is always on, so it's kind of a buffer for that. Also, it's a +1 instead of a +2, so there's a bit of a trade-off. But just the fact that you can have an excuse to play your favorite tunes, you can play your Lord of the Rings soundtracks in an epic battle, or any even silly themes, and you can try to stealth around with the Blues Brothers soundtrack behind you and see the DM cringe. Like, this is such an amazing cantrip, and it's just perfect for a bard. Then I think I will take the shield cantrip. It's a nice single action thing to do. It's not like we're missing single actions, but with this we have both hands free and can still benefit from a shield. It seems nice utility. And then I will take a bit more of utility with Mage Hand, which is the poor man's telekinesis. So here we go for the cantrips. Very flexible selection. I'm sure this is not by any means an optimal selection, but we've got a bit of offense and a lot of utility. As for our leveled spells, our Muse spells is for sure Soothe. Powerful healing spell. Not the best in the game, but still a healing spell. And I think we want to take at level 1 an extremely potent spell, which is Magic Weapon. This is a 1 combat buff, which increases significantly the damage of any striker. So strikers are going to love you for this. I think at this level, both of our slots are probably going to be spent on Magic Weapon. Maybe an emergency Soothe. Kind of depends on the party balance. If we've got many strikers, Magic Weapon is going to be cast a lot. If we don't have any other healers, we might want to keep our spell slots for emergency Soothes. Which kind of leaves with the third slot being a bit of a flexible slot. We can really take anything, knowing that it's not probably something that we're going to cast very often. This would be my ritual spell if this was 5th edition, but ritual spells work differently in here. We don't have like spells that don't consume spell slots. So I think I am going to take just Magic Missile for on-demand damage, guaranteed damage, which is what we're missing at level 1 and might come in handy in certain circumstances. Let us now upgrade our character to level 6 and see in 5 levels what our spellcasting is going to look like. Now, I would retrain both Magic Weapon and Magic Missile. Magic Weapon becomes irrelevant because by this point I would expect everyone to already have the runed weapons. I mean, everyone who cares would have it. And I think we can do better than Magic Missile, especially if we don't plan to make it a signature spell and have it be castable at every level. So I think we're going to take a reaction. We don't have many reactions at this point, so there is a reaction spell here, and that reaction spell is Schadenfreude. And this is a reaction which triggers when somebody critically fails, and then you can make an enemy take a will saving throw, and even if they succeed, they have a penalty to will saving throws, and if they fail, they become stupefied or even stunned on a critical failure. It's a way to use reactions. At this point we have up to level 3 spell slots, so taking circumstantial spells at level 1 I think is nice, as long as we have a nice kind of spammable option. That option I think would be Illusory Object. This is kind of like Silent Image meets Minor Illusion as a first level spell. I think it's closer to Silent Image probably. It's the illusory image of a stationary object. This is a spell which rewards player creativity. You know how illusions work if you've played 5th edition. What I have to say is that generally illusions I think are better in Pathfinder, because in 5th edition they suffer a bit of a DM bias problem, which is when you get illusions, suddenly everyone doubts what you're casting and they assume you're casting an illusion, which make illusions inherently worse. However, Pathfinder explicitly states that illusions start being believed, unless you give them very good reasons to think otherwise. So if you are summoning a dragon, people are going to assume that you summoned a dragon and not the illusion of a dragon. And this makes illusion a category of spells which is incredibly buffed when compared to D&D. Unlike most other spells which are kind of nerfed, and probably rightfully so, illusions are very appealing for this reason. And as a bard and occult casters, I think we're going to love casting illusions. We will also take Sanctuary at this level. This is a nice defensive spell which does not need to be upcast to be relevant. At level 2, things get more interesting, and we will take the upgraded version of Illusory Object, which is Illusory Creature. This is a sustained spell which allows us to summon literally anything. It deals a bit of damage. We could upcast this and use it as an upcast spell to be kind of a damage dealing spell, but the damage is not that high. What it does is, this is basically Major Image on steroids. It's such a powerful and versatile spell. You can use it to distract creatures, waste their actions. You can use to maybe win entire combat encounters, create diversions. Just your imagination is the limit. This is an extremely powerful second level spell, so this is for sure the first spell we would get at level 2. Another great spell that I saw here in the list is a spell called Lose times Arrow. This is a 2-action spell which allows you to target up to 6 creatures and give them a free action. And this free action is either a step or a stride. So for the cost of 2 actions, you can get a lot of strikes out of it. And this is a very good way to start a combat, for example, giving everyone extra movement, or if you've got an enemy surrounded, giving everyone an extra attack. Maybe they can then do something else with their actions. Extra strikes are not necessarily as powerful as in 5th edition because of the multiple attack penalty, but again, your allies are buffed by your Inspire Courage and so on, so this looks like a very potent effect. And finally, this might not be very exciting, but it's the kind of spell that if you don't take, you're going to regret. Dispel Magic. It's Dispel Magic. It dispels magic. You're going to need it in campaigns. It's going to save your life, save you a lot of trouble. If you've got access to it, you take it, no questions asked. I expect this to work as in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. You need somebody in the party with this. And if you have it as a bard, you should probably take it. And we've got a level 3 spells. Let's see, level 3 is usually with spellcasters where things get obscenely overpowered. I have to say that when I first saw this spell, and this spell is slow, I thought this spell looks pretty good. Then I went to look it up on the internet and I found out that I was wrong. The spell is not pretty good. The spell is completely broken, because what I had missed is that this spell actually does not have the incapacitation trait. So this is a spell which works on a success on anything. This slows a creature for 1 round. You can spam this against a boss and take away 1 of their action at the cost of 2 of yours. This is incredibly powerful. If, God forbid, should the enemy fail their saving throw, or critically fail the saving throw, the encounter is basically over. This is kind of like your hypnotic pattern. It works on a single target, not on an AoE, but it's extremely powerful. It's like an auto-include in any spellcaster who can get it. Any spellcaster who can get it should. And we can, and so we will. A nice spell we have at this level is Heroism. We can do something similar with our Inspire Courage. However, this lasts for 10 minutes, so we can precast it in combat, or on a fighter or something like that, and have our action more readily available. We can use our composition for something else. This is level 6. We just got Dirge of Doom, so this frees our composition slot to do something else. If we've got only 1 striker who's really benefiting from our Inspire Courage, this seems like a very clear selection. If there are many strikers, then maybe Heroism could be swapped for something else, but it seems reasonable to assume we would be able to make good use of it. And finally, I'm going to memorize here a heightened spell. Now, the way heightening of spells works in Pathfinder is that prepared and spontaneous spellcasters cannot just choose to heighten the spells they know willy-nilly. They have to literally prepare or learn at the appropriate level the spell that they want to upcast. This is a very high price to pay, but I think it's worth it for fear. This is an AoE control effect which inflicts the frightened condition. Again, it kind of works in competition with Dirge of Doom, but I took it on the same principle of heroism. If we use fear, we don't have to use Dirge of Doom, and then we can kind of use our other composition effects. And this can, potentially on failures, be more powerful than Dirge of Doom. Of course, this does cost us a resource. Dirge of Doom does not. So I think there is more like they are side grades, not necessarily compete with each other. Another thing which we should address now are signature spells. We can, for every level of our spells, select a spell, and this will become a spell that we can actually upcast with our every spell level. This will remove the limitation that I was talking about before. So for level 1, I think Soothe is a very good candidate for a signature spell. If there is a cleric in your party, if there is a dedicated healer, then I think there is an argument in not taking Soothe, in taking like maybe Magic Missile and making that your signature spell, but I think healing is very useful, and so I assume that we are going to make good use of upcast Soothes to save our party's lives. For level 2, as I mentioned, Illusory Creature is a good candidate for upcasting if we want to deal damage with it. However, I think I'll use this more for utility and distraction, so I don't really need to spend powerful spell slots. The creature dies in one hit, so it's kind of, and this is always true no matter how high the spell slot is, so it might be a bit risky to sink a very powerful spell slot into this spell. Instead, something that's always useful to upcast, because the spell becomes better, is Dispel Magic. I think it's kind of like a requisite to have it as a signature spell if we want to actually take it, so this is what we're going to do. And finally, we can make Fear a signature spell, so we can cast it with lower level spell slots, should we require, as a single cast. And we should not forget that we have been gaining our Captivator spellcasting effects. The Dedication gave us 2 cantrips, and I think we can take more utility cantrips. We can take Message. It's kind of like Telepathy for the poor, a nice staple of any edition. And I also took Prestidigitation. Again, it's a fun spell to take. You can take something more impactful like Warp Step if you want, but I just like Prestidigitation. I like using it a lot in my campaigns. Our basic spellcasting also gives us 2 of these spells, and for level 1 I will choose... we could choose more copies of the spells we already have. Since I'm a new player, I think I'm going to try and experiment a bit with this character. I will take another reaction spell, Lose the Path. This is a spell you can cast on a creature, which is moving, and if you do, the creature and the creature fails on a will saving throw, the creature will treat all square as difficult terrains for its stride. This may potentially lead to them wasting an action, so it's a nice utility level 1 spell, which I might retrain later on. And at level 2, there is a spell I did not take, a very powerful level 2 spell. I might have taken this with my actual spell slots, but now that I have the option, I will take Invisibility. I think Invisibility is very potent. This is not as powerful as an hour-long Invisibility cast, so I don't think we are probably going to cast it more than once per day, but I think every day we are probably going to cast it at least once, for scouting purposes or for defensive purposes, and so I took Invisibility here. Maybe at lower level, like level 3, when I just reached level 3, I might have taken Invisibility with my level 2 slots instead maybe of Lose times Arrow. But I think Lose times Arrow is usually more relevant than Invisibility in combat, so I expect to cast this more than invisibility, but you can switch them around if you like. Let us upgrade to level 11. The first thing I want to mention is that in just one level, we are going to get our reactive charm. So we want a level 1 spell that we can spam with this. So I might retrain Schadenfreude and get instead, which I know I'm pronouncing wrong by the way, and get instead a spammable spell. I think I will get Command, as I mentioned. And this is so useful, I think, that I might actually retrain Lose the Path, depending on how useful I found it on earlier levels, to get extra casts of Command. The other spells I'll leave as they are. I can also change the signature spells of level 3 from Fear to Slow, because now I can cast Slow more times with my higher level spell slots. It would make no sense to have it as a signature spell at level 6, because I cannot downcast Slow with lower level spells, and I have no higher spell slots than level 3. But now I do, and so Slow becomes my new signature spell. We have access to level 4 spells. I will keep on with the tradition of learning heightened spells that are extremely powerful. This spell is another staple of character builds in D&D, and the spell is Silence. Silence, at its basic level, makes a creature make no sound and prevents them from using actions with the auditory trait. Cast it on ourselves, this basically shuts us down as characters. This is comforting to know. It means that it might be able to shut out other creatures. Of course, this can only be cast on a willing creature, so we cannot cast it offensively at its base level, which is level 2, but at level 4, this becomes an emanation, a 10-foot radius emanation. So we can cast it on our dumb striker, and then our striker can get in the face of a spellcaster and deny all their spell which rely on verbal components. So this seems like a very useful counterspell-like effect which you really want in a party. Simplifies a lot of encounter, probably. Doesn't outright shut down casters, because a caster can still move, but, you know, maybe you cast it on a grappler, maybe you cast it on somebody who's good at tripping, and then they waste a lot of actions to get away, get opportunity attacks. It seems very advantageous to have this in your repertoire. We also have a level 4 spell. We are starting to miss a bit of fence. I think that we are going to take an offensive spell right now. This is Innovation. This targets Fortitude. We target Will a lot, so let's take spells that target other saving throws. This deals persistent negative damage in a line, even if they succeed on the saving throw, which, you know, Fortitude doesn't seem like a good save to target, but even if they succeed, they get some persistent negative damage, which is pretty good. And if they fail, they get even more damage. So that seems like a very nice spell. It's kind of AoE in a line. I will make it my signature spell. So now we have an option to deal damage if we want. As the third slot, again, fly. There are lots of ways to gain fly for many creatures. One of them is the fly spell. And so I think not everyone is going to be able to fly, and with this we can do it on demand. It lasts 5 minutes. It's something you usually want in your party, somebody able to fly. We also have level 5 spells, and here we get an amazingly named spell as my first pick, and that spell is Synesthesia. This is a Greek word. It's actually 2 Greek words which mean something like to feel together. It's a rhetorical figure which kind of relies on combining multiple sensations. So, for example, an icy gaze is a synesthesia because it combines the vision, the gaze, and the cold feeling of ice. And you might be thinking, Jack, I don't give a shit about all of this. But you'd be wrong. You need to know this if you cast synesthesia. And I have to say, I just want to play a Pathfinder game for the pleasure of saying I cast synesthesia. So apart from the fact that it's an amazing name, a beautiful word which is not used nearly as often as it deserves, this is also a powerful effect. It has 3 powerful effects: targeting will saves, it makes concentration harder, DC 5 flat check to denied, it conceals all creatures and objects from a creature, seems very good defensive buff, and this is the big one, makes a creature clumsy 3 and gives them a 10-foot status penalty to all its speeds. Clumsy 3 means a -3 penalty to the armor class and dexterity-based things. Now, this looks incredibly powerful, but surely, this allows for a saving throw. The issue is that when they succeed on a saving throw, no incapacitation, they are still affected by this for 1 round. And if they fail, they are affected by it for the entire combat. So you can drop synesthesia on somebody. Then you can inspire courage. Hell, you can inspire heroism. And suddenly you've got a +6 overall, because -3 penalty to the armor class, +3 to hit, between your marshals and your target. If you combine this with a clever use of your turn, you want, of course, to cast this after the enemy has acted. You don't want to cast this, then the enemy gets their turn and the effect ends. No, you want to cast this after the enemy and before your companions. So your companions get to strike the enemy all together with this effect on. So coordination is important for the spell. But when you do, this looks like an obliteration effect. This is so reliable and so powerful. If it is really true that every +1 matters in this system, this is like a +6. I am speechless. This is amazing. Speaking of amazing spells, this is not even over yet. We can learn a heightened spell, and it's something that I couldn't fit in the previous level because there was so much amazing stuff, but we're going to get it now. And we're going to get Dimension Door. This is another staple of 5th edition. It's the get out of dodge spell, the teleportation effect. You can bring somebody with you. It's Dimension Door, 1 mile when upcast, so pretty good. We might want to be able to use this more than 3 times a day, especially because this is competing with synesthesia. So I think casting it as a 4th spell is pretty good, so we will make it our signature spell so we can downcast this. Finally, this is a spell that I always take because it's just too cool. It's Black Tentacles. How can you not take Black Tentacles? These are not Evert's Black Tentacles, I think for copyright reasons. They are somebody else's Black Tentacles, but still they are tentacles and they are black. They create an area of terrain which grapples the enemies, deals bludgeoning damage. Amazing control spell, very thematic, very cool to see in action. It costs 3 actions, so for a bard this is a very tough sell. I would not be surprised if it's a mistake for a bard to take this spell, so let me know what you think about it. I just have a soft spot for the Black Tentacles. It is so cool to summon them. Especially for our ballerina, having a literally captive audience, it's too good to pass up. We also have a couple of level 6 spells, and I have to confess, when I saw this on the bard list, I squealed in excitement, which is the polite way to say that, well, you know what I did. But here it is. It's Wall of Force. The best control spell of 5th edition. And then I was like, okay, this has to be nerfed. There is no way this is as good as the actual Wall of Force. And it's kind of nerfed, maybe. This wall has an armor class, hardness, and hit points, so it is not indestructible, but still seems reasonably resilient. It costs 3 actions, so it's your entire turn of casting. However, there are also upsides to this spell. It does not require concentration. It does not require to be sustained. It also says that it blocks physical effects and incorporeal effects, which begs the question, are our spells like Black Tentacles a physical effect? I don't know. Maybe they are. Also, it's not clear if you can shape this wall into a cage. I've looked it up on the internet and I couldn't find a satisfactory answer, so let me know what you think about this. If you can shape this and trap creatures inside it, then this becomes obscenely, and then, you know, you can cast spells through it, then this becomes obscenely overpowered. I think this is not supposed to work that way, but I also think it's reasonable to pre-cast a spell and then lock a creature inside it. It might be possible to do it even if you cannot shape the wall, as long as you're working in a narrow corridor or something like that. It's just such a powerful battlefield control spell, all things said and done. It seems very weird for it to be in our spell list, but I'm not going to complain. Also, we are going to continue our trend of learning heightened spells. This always feels bad when we do it. It feels like I'm not using signature spells well enough. But again, I don't need to cast this at every level. I just need to cast it at this specific level. And the spell I'm talking about is, of course, again, Heroism. Heroism is better than our Inspire Courage right now, unless it's buffed, of course, because the status bonus is right now +2. So everything I said before about Heroism applies, only more because the spell is better. Let us also look now at our Captivator spells. I switched command, as I was saying. For our level 3 spell, pick what you want. Heroism seems like a reasonable choice. This is going to become very relevant when we are higher level Captivators. So we want it in this slot when we gain our heightened captivation, because this is the spell we're going to target with that. Right now we don't need it. You can take any other enchantment or illusion spell you like. But, you know, Heroism is pretty decent, so I'll take that. And as level 4 spells, there is a very cool spell, which is Veil. Party-wide disguise. Lasts for an hour. Doesn't require sustain. What can I say? This seems a very useful tool to have in our arsenal. Since we have Heroism as both a level 6 spell and as a level 3 spell for a single use, I don't think it's necessary to know it as a level 3 spell anymore, so I will change it for something else. And I think Time Jump is a nice option. This is a single action spell. This gives us 2 actions, which we can use for movement. We can use it to leap, to step, to stride. We can use it with our flying speeds, and this also stops time briefly, so no reactions. Very convenient way to get out of a very threatening situation. Maybe we are in melee with too many creatures, we need to get out of there. We don't want to use a dimension door. This is a cheaper way to get out of there without wasting a dimension door on it. So a nice, neat little trick. So onwards and upwards, we go to level 16. At this point, we've got so many spell slots higher than level 5 that I think we can no longer justify having D-Door, but just more occasions to cast Synesthesia. It's just, we will shape this, we'll swap this as a signature spell, because I just love this effect, but maybe you can just keep D-Door if you find yourself moving around a lot. We get an extra level 6 spell, and also I realize I should have made Heroism probably a signature spell, so we can cast it at lower level. I don't think it's very relevant, but we could have done that. However, what we are going to do now is get a bit more damage, maybe. Perhaps Phantasmal Calamity. This is an AoE spell. I compared this with the Fireball, and this actually only deals 1d6 less than a Fireball. It has a wider area, though, and it also forces the enemy to make a reflex saving throw or stun a creature. This looks like very powerful damage effect, so we're going to make it our signature spell, so we have more AoE damage options. We also get level 7 spells. At level 7, there is a heightened spell which is very good, and that heightened spell is Haste. At level 3, it's a bit questionable because it gives Quicken Condition to one creature and gives them an extra action which can only be a strike or stride. It didn't seem much more powerful than Lose Time Arrow, and it required a higher spell slot, so I wasn't sure if it was really good action economy wise. But if it targets the entire party, well then I'm sure it is good action economy wise, so I'm going to take it. The second spell that I took is another AoE persistent this time damage effect. It kind of competes with Black Tentacles. It's Black Tentacles on steroids. In a way, it's Visions of Danger. This deals only 8d8 mental damage to creatures in a large area, but this spell continues, and then if you enter the burst or start your turn inside the burst, you keep taking the damage, and you can only disbelieve the illusion if you critically succeed at the will saving throw. So if you can trap somebody in a wall of force, and you can cast Visions of Danger in it, like this is clearly not a physical effect. Then you've got your kind of Sickening Radiance effect. This is not nearly as powerful as Sickening Radiance, but it's still a pretty good kind of microwave effect to melt enemies if they cannot escape your trap. Powerful effect, make it a signature effect so we can deal more damage with it. Finally, another heightened effect which I found is Fly. Now it lasts for an hour. We cast it once and we make somebody able to fly for probably most of the adventuring day. We've got 8 level spells as well. Speaking of spells that are amazing, haha! Oh god, here's Maze. This is incredibly powerful. You point at a creature, the creature gets just removed from combat without any saves, and then they get their saves to get out of the maze. But even if they succeed, they still waste actions. What a great single target control spell. Let's take it. Again, this looks like an arcane spell more than an occult spell, but I guess Minotaurs, Labyrinths, okay, fine, let's keep it. If you liked Invisibility, you are going to love Disappearance. This lasts for 10 minutes, and it works against not just vision, but all senses. Thank you, Super Invisibility. If you've got a rogue, they're going to love you for this. This is also a defensive spell. This is Invisibility, but better. So yes, please. What is it that we're missing at this point? I would say single target damage. Why not? And we've got that too. Spirit Song. 18d6 damage on a single target, on a fortitude saves. This is nice. This is not an illusory effect. This is real. And it's also, you're dealing damage to the soul of a creature in a way. So it doesn't look on soulless creatures, but it does work on creature that are possessed, and it targets the possessor and not the possessed, which is neat if circumstantial. But, you know, single target damage, pretty cool. Again, I'm not taking any signature spells, this time willingly, not because I forgot. I just think that there are so many great level 8 spells that I don't want to learn a lower level heightened spell here, just to be able to take advantage of the signature spell feature. So I'm going to renounce that to be able to have all these 3 amazing options: great single target control, great single target damage, great single target long duration buff. Let us look at what our Captivator dedication is giving us. Not much has changed at the lower levels, I'd say. We got level 5 slots, and you know what I'm going to take. It's Synesthesia, more of it. We've got a level 6 spell, and you know, we can take more of our damage dealing spells. Why not? These are illusion-based damage dealing spells. Illusions can deal damage, isn't that great? What a great system. Phantasmal Calamity, and our Visions of Danger, which is also an illusion spell. So we double down on our damage dealing. If there is something that we can safely assume we're going to do once per day, it's dealing damage. I have to say that these high-level spell slots, when compared to 5th edition, feel a lot more satisfactory. 5th edition has this thing where you get to higher level spell slots and you're like, is that all I get? Really? I used to get things like Polymorph, and now I have Mass Suggestion, which is powerful, certainly, but Instead, here we get super invisibility, crazy damage, AoE, doom. This is very exciting. And so with this excitement, we can take a look at the end of our career. All right, here we are level 20. We are at the end of our career. We have done it. We've conquered the campaign. We've triumphed. Let's see what we got for our troubles. I will take Disappearance as one of my Captivator spells. This frees this slot to be something which is not illusion. I think that at this point we can start and use summons a bit. I will take Summon Fae. The summon spells are incredibly complicated because they give you access to a bunch of creature options that you have to know. They are very versatile, but very daunting, especially for a new player. But I think that at this high level, I would have sufficient mastery with the system to be able to dabble with this. I've seen that some of these creatures can cast spell themselves with some restrictions. I do not believe there is a way to turn your entire party into flying Tyrannosauruses, which, boo, bad system. But I still think that being able to have creatures that can cast, for example, extra heals or maybe some control or support spells is pretty nice. So much so that I'm going to make this a signature spell, so we can summon some low-level trash if we need it, or some higher-level Fey Lords if the circumstance requires it. Let's look at level 9 spells. The list is pretty short, so this shouldn't be too hard to select. We have Foresight. This is a very long duration effect, which gives you a very powerful defensive boost. +2 status bonus to initiative rolls. You cannot get flat-footed against undetected creatures. And you get a powerful reaction, which is basically a reaction to gain advantage on saving throws, for example, or other rolls that creature forces you to roll. Incredibly powerful defensive effect. Lasts very long. Seems like an excellent use of a level 9 spell. We also want something a bit fleshier, maybe. And here we have a spell which is called Unspeakable Shadow. This summons a terrifying shadow monster which stalks a creature. And if the creature succeeds their will save, then they become frightened 2. This is like super demoralize. The interesting thing is that it doesn't just inflict the penalties of frightened, but as long as a creature is frightened by this spell, then the frightened creature must spend at least one of its turn, either to attack the shadow, which does nothing, it's just a useless strike, but it's good news because it still inflicts the multiple attack penalty on the creature, or to flee from the shadow, which is one movement action, which triggers opportunity attacks. So they can choose between a bad action and a worse action. Fun fact, this lasts until the creature is frightened by this spell. Interestingly, we've got a class feature, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called Dirge of Doom, and as long as a creature is under our Dirge of Doom, which allows no saving throws, by the way, that creature cannot get their frightened value below 1. So as long as we cast our Dirge of Doom, which we can do for free, thanks to our eternal composition. So every round we have a free action, basically, to cast a composition cantrip. So as long as we can keep the Dirge of Doom running on that creature is going to have one less action, and because of this spell. If, God forbid, the creature is also slowed, then it's going to have 2 less actions. This looks like the ultimate control shenanigan bullshit. It is a mental effect, it is an emotion effect. I am going to comment on that. It did not escape my notice. But when it lands, this looks like it just ends combat encounters. For our third 9 level spell slot, more summons, why not? Again, I like summons a lot thematically. I wasn't sure at how powerful they were in this system. They seem very complex and very interesting. So I'm taking it at this point in the character because I feel like I would have gained enough experience to make good use of it. I'm taking Animate Dead, comparing the undead list with the Fae. The Fae seem like they have a bit more useful magical abilities, whereas the undead are like tankier and better at fighting. So maybe there are these two different options for these two summons. Pretty good. Having access to a summon also gives us a very good effortless concentration target. We can have a summon as a target of effortless concentration, and then we can have as a target of our effortless captivation a spell like Illusionary Creature. So we can summon 2 copies of an incredibly powerful high-level summon. One of them is an illusion and attacks from range. One of them is real and attacks from melee. Or also from range, I don't know, to confuse the enemy. It seems an incredibly powerful effect. And finally, we get our level 10 spells. We get 2 of them, courtesy of Perfect Encore. And the first one, there is no doubt about it, it's Alter Reality. This is Wish, just the occult version, but it's Wish, and it's an auto-include. We like Wish, nothing else to say about it. And then we get another level 10 spell, and oh god, there's so much good stuff here, but I have to take Time Stop. This gives you 9 actions. This is the ultimate action economy cheese. You cannot do damage, but you can for sure set up multiple summons with this. You can set up your phantasmal calamities, your visions of danger, your AoE, nonsense, black tentacles, whatever you have, what have you. Just go crazy with this. Again, this is looks like an encounter ending effect. Set up your buffs. You've got 9 actions. I'm sure you'll be able to make excellent use of it. Let us not forget our Captivator abilities. Let us not forget that many of these spells we can cast twice, up to 7th level, because of our captivating intensity. At level 8, as I mentioned, I'm going to take Disappearance. Again, this looks like a spell which we probably cast once, but it's very useful to have. And this frees up to have Summon Fae at level 8. If you cast Disappearance a lot, you can maybe drop Summon Fae. 2 summons might be a bit too much. And at level 9, I speaked about it a lot. Unspeakable Shadow, it's good. Let's get more of it. Also, we have targets for our heightened captivation. I couldn't bother to add them manually. You can probably with Path Builder somehow, but it's not important that I actually show you how. We can choose 2 of our Captivator spells to be able to cast it as 9th level spells. And these 2 spells will be Heroism. And Heroism, as a 9th level spell, gives you a status bonus, which is +3. 10 minutes of +3 on one of your allies, probably a striker, to attack rolls, perception checks, saving throws, and skill checks. Your allies are going to love you. So all things said and done, let's take a good look at our spell selection and what we have. We have a lot of control, single target and AoE. We've got utility with spells like Dimension Door, Fly. We've got a bit of evasion with Time Jump. We've got some incredibly powerful buffs with Heroism, for example, and Invisibility and Disappearance. We've got damage dealing. We've got Innovation, we've got AoE, Phantasmal Calamity, we've got persistent damage. We've got summons. We've got battlefield control in the form of not just debuffing enemies, but also spells like Maze and Wall of Force. We've got Wish, of course. And when I look at this list, what I have to ask myself is, what could a wizard possibly get that it's better than this? Because it seems like we've got everything. And this is such an amazing list with so much flexibility and versatility that it's the dream of a spellcaster. I do not feel with this build the restriction of being a spontaneous spellcaster at all, thanks to signature spells. I think we've got all our basics covered. Every single level has something useful and relevant. And even level 1, just spamming commands as a reaction to have enemies go away from us seems pretty decent. We can also use it to summon crappy Fae and have them, trigger traps for us or whatever. There is so much stuff here. I cannot praise enough the design philosophy which led to me being able to build such a spell list. I don't know if experienced players will have some objections to the spells I took, and if you have some recommendations or other favorite spells or things you would do differently, then please do let me know. But this spell list looks amazing. Final thoughts. So we've made a ballerina bard who is a rhino who specializes in having a captive audience, buffing her supporters, debuffing her enemies, creating wondrous, amazing effects through the beauty of her art. Is this character overpowered? One thing that I didn't mention thus far when praising and gushing over our spell list is that we do have many effects, not all of them. For example, we have our innovations and so on, but many of our effects are effects that have the mental trait, the emotion trait, maybe the fear, the illusion, the visual trait. These are a bit of a red flag because these are effects which can be resistant. I don't know how prevalent these resistances are in the system, but I would expect stuff like constructs or maybe undead or maybe oozes and so on to be immune to emotion effects because they are emotionless. And also mental effects might be resisted. We target will saves a lot if we are facing enemies with strong will saves. Our versatility and flexibility is diminished. So we are not necessarily all powerful. We're not going to steamroll every single encounter. There are some pretty obvious counters to what we can do. However, we must not forget that at our core, we are a support character. And while our battlefield control and debuffs might not be 100% reliable, our buffs are, and our buffs are incredibly impactful. So I don't think this character has ever a chance to feel useless in any combat. And also I don't think a DM is unable to deal with this character just stealing the spotlight and breaking every single fight. Again, I have to praise the design of the system and of the class because it seems to lead to a very balanced situation, which is not bland. It's balanced in it while offering a lot of possibilities. This is a character that I would enjoy immensely playing and leveling up, even more so possibly than the barbarian. The biggest draw here, I think, is that it has even more things that this character gets even more as they level up. Whereas for a barbarian, the even levels were the levels of the class feats, and so they were very exciting, and the odd levels were somewhat a bit less exciting because yes, you've got skill increases, sometimes some features, sometimes ability boosts, and ancestry feats are fine, general feats are maybe not as exciting, but this character has spells, so even levels, you get higher spell levels, very exciting stuff. Odd levels, you get class feats. Playing a spellcaster looks like a lot of fun. We are not as survivable as the barbarian. We do not deal damage as much as the barbarian, which maybe is the most satisfactory thing to do in a combat encounter, just killing things. But again, there is so much we can do in and out of combat. We are still the face of the group, there is no doubt about that. I think that the Bard has a very good chance of remaining among my favorite classes after seeing this. And I could go on gushing about how well designed I think this class is, but I think you understood how much I enjoyed this character and how much I enjoyed making this build. And I hope it was entertaining for you as well. With that being said, this concludes the video. As always, let me know what you think about the character, what you think about the bard as a class, and point out any other directions that you think the build might have gone, which were perhaps more optimal. This is all for today. I thank you all very much for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.